Welcome to Tom's True Crime. Today, we uncover the twisted and complex story of Lynn and Willy Tanners. Tucson, Arizona, September 22, 2020, 1:31 a.m. Dispatch receives a 911 call. Caller says, "My wife is non-responsive. She's not breathing. She may have taken some pills." The caller is Willy Tanners, and the victim is his wife, Lynn. Police were told it could be an overdose, and the Willy is performing CPR. Officer Greg Hernandez arrives at the scene within minutes. His body camera was recording the emergency unfolding in front of him. What's going on? Willy Tanners was at the front door. Then he turns around and runs into the residence. Officer Hernandez follows Willy up the stairs. At the top of the stairs near the main bedroom, Willy Tanners, dressed in scrubs, was performing CPR on his wife Lynn Tanners. Officer Hernandez assumes he's giving better care than what he can provide. Officer Hernandez asks him whether he wants help. Willy relinquishes giving CPR immediately. While Hernandez desperately tried to revive Lynn, he asked Willy what pills she took. Willy stands up, walks to the bathroom. Officer Hernandez hears him opening the medicine cabinet. Upon his return, he hands Hernandez a pill bottle. The medication had been prescribed to Willy, not to his wife Lynn. Hernandez quickly tossed the pill bottle aside to continue CPR. Willy told Officer Hernandez that Lynn had been very depressed lately. Willy told the officer that the couple's two young sons were still in separate bedrooms nearby, seemingly unaware of what was happening to their mother. She normally likes to take her children to the park. She reads to them before they went to bed. Just a really dedicated mother. Friends and family of Lynn said she adored her boys, 5-year-old Philip and 2-year-old Colin. Lynn enjoyed being a stay-at-home mom. She was planning to resume her career as a nurse. Willy is also a nurse. That's how they met at work. She fell in love and got swept off her feet. She saw a life and a future with Willy. Lynn was enamored because Willy gave her so much attention. Her sister and her father had some cautions because of his age. He was 10 years older than her, but Lynn saw someone who had set goals and dreams, and he sold those dreams to her. Lynn and Willy were married in 2010. Early in Willy and Lynn's marriage, people described Willy as family-oriented, a hard worker, a smart guy. He would always talk about Lynn and Philip and showing pictures of his son and talking about family life in general. And now at the Tanners' home, paramedics and police were struggling to save the life of the young wife and mother. When more help arrived, Officer Hernandez sent Willy Tanners downstairs to the kitchen. And that's when Hernandez realized that the pill bottle he had tossed to the side earlier was now missing. He had a prescription drug. Where is it? He thought Willy must have taken the bottle. Officer Hernandez found that unusual. What was he trying to hide? At 2:15 a.m., 31-year-old Lynn Tanners was declared dead inside their home. Police began asking Willy what had happened to his wife. Willy said, "We had sex. I took a shower." Then he thought Lynn was knocked out. By now, things just didn't feel right to the investigators. And there was something about Willy's appearance that seemed suspicious. He was sweating profusely. That made investigators suspect that Willy is using drugs. He may be under the influence of drugs. The children are now in the care of law enforcement and escorted outside. Authorities launched a death investigation. Sergeant Victor Sanchez was the lead detective in the case. He starts trying to get information from Willy Tanner, and he notices him not answering fully. When Sergeant Sanchez asked him what's going on, Willy, he goes, "Well, I am a very private person, and those questions are something that I don't want coming out." Lynn had been seeking help through the church, through a pastor. She was also being treated for severe depression and anxiety. But this case was unique because she was also expressing her thoughts, her feelings, her emotions in a diary. Lynn described that she was going through a tough time, but that she loved those kids and she couldn't wait to do more in the future. Lynn wanted to be a good mom, a mom that is present, engaged, and involved with her kids. Those entries raised doubts about the self-exit theory. They show that even though she was depressed, the way she felt about her children and how she wanted to be there for them, it's unlikely she will self-exit. She was thinking about long-term, the future with her children. As it turns out, her diary played a crucial role in this case. Lynn was born in 1989. Her early life was a happy childhood, enjoyed her high school years. Lynn's parents divorced when she was a little bit younger, and it was difficult for her. That led to her goal, which is to marry the love of her life and never have to divorce. She wasn't a drug abuser. She loved those kids. She would never leave them behind. Lead investigator Sergeant Victor Sanchez didn't know if Lynn had passed by self-exit, an accidental overdose, or if her husband was somehow involved. Sanchez knew he needed to search the house, but to do it, he would have to get Willy Tanners' permission. Willy said, "I don't want you going through my stuff because I'm a very private man." Sergeant Sanchez said to Willy, "I'm not going to force you. That is your right. But I want to have to go to the district attorney and apply for a search warrant." Willy eventually gave consent for the search. Still, Sanchez had a lot of questions. To get some answers, he directed authorities to put Willy in a police cruiser to take him to the station. Once Willy arrived at the police station, he was put in a room with cameras. Everything is recorded. Willy began hitting walls, kicking furniture. It was scaring some of the people down the hall in the dispatch room. That's how loud it was. Around 4 a.m., Sanchez begins his interview with Willy Tanners, who claims he had given Lynn that bottle of pills prescribed to him. Sergeant asked Willy, is it possible that she swallowed it? But Willy seems to have developed a memory problem. He couldn't remember the simplest things. Sergeant asked him to go through what he did the minute he got to Lynn's house. "What did you do?" Instead of answering, Willy just kept saying, "What did I do? What did I do?" Investigators found that highly suspicious because if you tell the truth, you don't have to think about it. The sudden death of a healthy 31-year-old woman like Lynn Tanners didn't make sense to Sergeant Victor Sanchez, and neither did her husband, Willy Tanners' explanation. His initial statement was that he went in and took a shower. He thought she was asleep, and then 10 minutes later, he realizes that she's unresponsive. When a person showers, what's going to be in the bathroom? Steam, condensation, the smell of soap or shampoo. That master bedroom shower, which is the one that he allegedly used, was completely dry. Investigators had also discovered a syringe wrapper on the floor and a needle catheter on the stairs. Syringes and IV equipment in a medical bag were found inside the home. Lynn's close friend, Barbara, and her husband, Gunter Lambie, rushed over to the house to take care of the kids. Gunter, a co-worker of Willy, says he had begun to see changes in Willy's physique and personality 2 years before Lynn's death. In 2017, Lynn had gotten pregnant, and very shortly after, she had a miscarriage. It was really difficult for Lynn. Willy didn't understand what happened and thought somehow that the miscarriage was her fault. And that didn't help her state of mind. Lynn was so excited to be pregnant again just a short time after her miscarriage. She had her second son, Colin, in 2018, and she was ecstatic. Willy seemed excited, but this is the time where Lynn started to feel some distance. He started to be more secretive, and that made her nervous that maybe she was doing something wrong. Willy wasn't around a lot. He had a 5-year goal that he obsessively spoke about, and so he devoted himself to work, took overtime whenever he could. Lynn talked about a lot of the changes going on in Willy's life. He started bulking up so fast that it seemed abnormal to those around him. People suspected there was some supplements going on, probably a lot of steroids. His personality was changing, also flirting more with girls. The family man who had once bragged to friends and colleagues about his wife and kids began changing his social media posts too. He started posting everything by himself, not with his kids. His priorities appeared vain and short-sighted. His goals were money and his figure, his body. Willy was making good money, and he enjoyed showing off his wealth. He has a new sporty car, and he likes to brag. Friends say the changes they saw in Willy went much deeper. In 2018, around the same time Lynn gave birth to the couple's second son, Willy began pursuing a woman named Luby Johnson-Guntz, a surgical nurse he met at work. In January of 2019, Willy asked for a break from their marriage. He was not happy with the way things were going, and so he decided he was going to move out and stay with a friend, and that was a really hard time for Lynn. They had been married for 10 years by then, and she didn't want to throw it away, all because of this 1 year where he's just acting insane. Her goal was always for her family to stay together, no matter what. At the point that Lynn and Willy were separated, he would come home to spend a little bit of time with her and the boys. He brings his laundry for her to do. He would convince her that they needed to have sex to continue to protect the marriage. In March of 2019, while Lynn was doing his laundry, she found a plane ticket. She never even knew he went to Spain. She knew in her heart that something was terribly wrong, and he had not been honest during this whole time. Lynn finally worked up the courage to confront Lynn about this plane ticket. Lynn admitted to having an affair with Luby. At this point, Willy broke down. He told Lynn that he wanted to keep his family. He wanted to be with his family. He wanted to be with her. He would break up with a girlfriend. So Lynn gave Willy another chance. She would do anything to get her family back. It ended up being a back and forth during that time. Willy would tell her one weekend that he stopped the affair, and then a couple days later, he would change his tune and walk back out. Just months after her husband had taken his mistress to Spain, Willy treated Lynn to a lavish getaway in Las Vegas and bought her expensive jewelry. Unbeknownst to Lynn, it was more than Spain. Willy had taken Luby to Italy, Greece, and France as well. The second chance for her marriage didn't last. Willy could never quite leave Luby. In September of 2020, Lynn found Willy's phone and was able to access a bunch of messages between him and Luby. It really showed her that he was in a full-blown affair and they were having sex. That was the moment that she saw it with her own eyes and that her determined spirit came out. Lynn confronted Willy. She was saying, "I'm done and I'm not going to listen to your lies anymore." So he told her, "I'm going to stop seeing Luby for real this time." Willy said, "We're going to move to Florida. That will prove to you that I'm willing to leave her." Lynn was skeptical, but at the same time, he had never offered to move away from his girlfriend before. Part of her wanted to believe that it could be true. Willy went out after that. Lynn got on the phone with her friend Barbara. She was very excited, telling Barbara that their marriage was going to turn around. They agreed to meet to talk. However, before she went to Barbara's house, she called Barbara again and tells her that she will be late. She told Barbara that she called Willy a moment ago and she heard a dog barking in the background and she thinks it is Luby's dog. That means Willy is lying to her again. Lynn said she's going to stop by Luby's house and see. Barbara told her that it might not be wise for her to go over there, that nothing good was going to come from it, but she said she just couldn't help herself, she had to. When Lynn arrived at Luby's house, she saw that his car was there. She got out of the car and decided to confront them both. She was very angry. She had just been played again. Luby used the Ring app to tell Lynn to leave right away or she would call the police. Lynn was incredibly upset and wasn't going to go anywhere until she had spoken to her husband. When Willy finally emerges, he tells Lynn that he has chosen Luby. Mere hours earlier, Willy had been telling a different story. Willy told Lynn to get in the car and they would drive to the park and talk. When Lynn and Willy were at the park, he got so angry that he smashed her windshield with his fist. Meanwhile, Luby called the police. The police responded fairly quickly. The officer calls Lynn. Lynn answers and the officer can hear Willy screaming at her. He is angry at Lynn because she answered the phone while they were talking. He told her to hang up the phone. The officer tries again, but the call went straight to voicemail. The officer said he will try one more time. Luby started to panic. She started texting Willy to tell him to be quiet, to let him know it was the police calling. The officer got through. After receiving the text from Luby, Willy knew it was going to be the police and instantly, he was a calm, collected person. The officer told Lynn not to return to Luby Johnson-Guntz's house. If she shows up again, she will be taken into custody. After the police hung up the phone with her, Lynn drove over to Barbara's house. She was very upset. She was almost hysterical. She told Barbara that she was finally ready to move on for real this time. No more getting lied to. Barbara saw Lynn the next day. She was sad, but she was determined to move on. Later that day, she sent Willy a text and let him know that for them to be legally separated, an attorney needed to be involved. Willy's response was that he didn't want any lawyers involved because it will cost too much money. He didn't want Lynn to go through with it because that would cost him. On Monday, September 21st, 2020, Willy sent an email to Lynn wanting to meet her at her house and talk. Again, he gave implication that there was hope for their marriage. Willy seemed to give the impression that he has had a change of heart. He wrote, "I'm so sad. I'm hurting inside. I want to sit down with you to talk without arguing. A heart-to-heart." They agreed to meet Monday night. Lynn told Barbara about the meeting. The meeting is set at around 7 p.m. Barbara tried convincing Lynn to say no to this meeting, but to no avail. Barbara asked Lynn to text her as soon as he arrived and as soon as he left. She agreed to do that. On Monday, it was 9:30 p.m. Barbara still had not heard from her. Willy showed up much later than he was supposed to. At around 1:30 a.m., Willy makes the 911 call. Lynn died early Tuesday morning. Willy told Sergeant Sanchez that he no longer lived with his family and that he had moved in with Luby Johnson-Guntz 5 months before Lynn's death. Sanchez wondered how much the other woman knew and asked her to come to the police station to talk. Sanchez was pressing Luby about Willy to get a better understanding of what is going on. Luby said that they had been dating for about 2 years. Willy had told Luby that Lynn was very depressed. When Sergeant Sanchez mentioned Lynn may have overdosed, Luby seemed surprised. Willy had told police that Lynn may have overdosed on prescribed medication. But when the autopsy was conducted, 8 hours after Lynn was declared dead, the medical examiner found no medication residue in her stomach. And there was something on Lynn's body at the scene that puzzled both the medical examiner and investigators. A tiny mark on Lynn's right arm. The kind you get when you get a blood check when you go to the doctor. Very common. One injection mark on her right elbow crease. That's it. No other signs of drug use. The autopsy report states that Lynn died from a mixed drug intoxication. While the medical examiner couldn't say how the drugs got into her system, she did rule out self-exit after talking to Lynn's friends and reading her journal. So could Lynn's death have been an accidental overdose, or was it murder? When Dr. Murray Kensington, Willy's former boss, heard the autopsy results, he immediately became suspicious. He called Detective Sanchez, and he told him his concerns. He urged Sergeant Sanchez to order a detailed toxicology screening to determine which drugs had killed Lynn and how they got there. Authorities would have to wait nearly 4 months to get the answers they needed. On a Sunday afternoon at the First Baptist Church, a large crowd of family and friends came to mourn Lynn Tanners, including her estranged husband, Willy. Her funeral was really sad. Willy was there, and he was crying. He seemed very upset, very sad. To Lynn's friends, he seemed a little too upset, too sad. Near the casket, Willy was crying over her and giving her kisses. It angered some of her friends, given how he had been cheating on her. He has made her suffer, and he is crying so much now. You are doing this now. Willy Tanners' display of grief did nothing to deter the investigation into his wife's death. Sergeant Victor Sanchez and Officer Greg Hernandez say the footage captured by the body cam on the morning Lynn died shows something curious. Remember the pills in a container that Willy said his wife had taken? Hernandez tossed it aside when he was giving Lynn CPR. At some point, it disappeared. The body cam footage clearly shows Willy grabbing the medication container and puts it in his pocket. He just reached over and put it right back in his shirt. If that's really what she took, why would you want to hide that? They were also suspicious of the needle catheter, the kind used for IVs discovered at the scene. Remember, Lynn had a tiny mark on her right arm. Sergeant Sanchez shared his concerns with the district attorney's office. The DA knew the case would be tough to prove since even the medical examiner wasn't sure exactly how Lynn died. The medical examiner cannot say for sure that this is a homicide. All they know is that she has a combination of dangerous drugs in her bloodstream. They don't know who gave them to her, if she had some in her system already, if she took some later on. They do know it is either accident or murder. Nearly 4 months after Lynn's death, Sergeant Sanchez and Officer Hernandez finally get the toxicology test results they have been waiting for. She had none of the medication Willy claimed Lynn had taken. Instead, the toxicology report revealed a cocktail of 7 drugs in Lynn's system. Most of those medications are typically used during surgery, and one of them can only be administered with an IV. The evidence seems to suggest Willy killed Lynn. Authorities got a warrant. Officer Hernandez, who had tried to save Lynn's life, returned to Willy's home to arrest Willy Tanners. Willy was compliant. He puts his hands behind his back, lets officers cuff him, doesn't put up a fight. Willy Tanners was taken to the police station and booked. Willy calls his attorney. Prosecutors believe he was the one who gave his wife the deadly mixture, but can they prove he wanted her to die? When Willy Tanners' former boss, Dr. Murray Kensington, saw the list of drugs found in Lynn Tanners' 7 different medications, he was surprised by one drug in particular. He was very shocked to see propofol. Where would he get that propofol? You can't just go to the drugstore to get propofol. You have to get it from a hospital. While most of the drugs found in Lynn's system could be consumed by mouth, propofol is usually injected by someone else with an IV. One of the things about propofol, it relaxes you greatly, but it doesn't last very long. It makes you stop breathing if you have too much. And after Lynn Tanners' death, a highly elevated level of the drug was found in her system. Hers was the highest level Dr. Kensington has seen. He believes this was death by propofol. With Willy Tanners now under arrest, authorities were convinced that Tanners' girlfriend, Luby Johnson-Guntz, knew more than what she shared in that first interview. So they got a search warrant for her home. Then they offered her a deal. In exchange for more information, Luby would get immunity from prosecution. Luby agreed to a second police interview. Accompanied by attorneys, she now seemed ready to talk. She told police that Willy brings home medical drugs. Luby told police that Tanners had often brought drugs to her home, some for his own recreational use, including opioids and propofol. Luby's information about propofol kicked the case into high gear. Prosecutors were convinced that Lynn's husband had methodically planned her murder and that the devoted mother and wife had suffered in the months before her death. They believe Lynn Tanners suffered emotional abuse. During Luby Johnson-Guntz's second police interview, she said Willy Tanners had told her about the night Lynn died. He had gone there, he said, to have that heart-to-heart talk and then injected her, not to kill her, Tanners said, but to calm her down. But investigators believe the sedatives were part of Tanners' plan to kill Lynn, that before Tanners put an IV needle in Lynn's arm, he slipped several sedative drugs into her coffee. Toxicology report shows caffeine in Lynn's system. She then passes out. After that, prosecutors allege Willy Tanners injected Lynn with a deadly dose of propofol. Prosecutors say Willy Tanners deliberately waited to call for help. He waited until she was dead to call 911 to make sure that no one can bring her back. Luby said Tanners did admit to her that he got rid of some of the medical equipment he used to inject Lynn before first responders arrived. Tanners was out on bail, so prosecutors had him rearrested. And along with murder, he was charged with tampering with evidence. Again, he made bail and would wear an ankle monitor. In March 2023, 2.5 years after Lynn Tanners' death, her husband went on trial for her murder. The evidence will show that Willy Tanners, the motive, he had the intent, and he had the means to kill Lynn. Prosecutors presented 15 witnesses to prove to a jury that Tanners had carefully and intentionally selected the drugs to kill Lynn. Their star witness, Luby Johnson-Guntz, who told the jury what she had shared with police. When the defense case begins, Willy Tanners' lawyers admit their client injected his wife. But they say he wasn't trying to kill her. He was trying to save her. Now, Lynn died, and there's no question that Willy was there. Defense attorney Sean O'Neill claims Lynn was extremely depressed and had been drinking and abusing drugs for months. When Willy arrived, Lynn was already on something. According to the defense, Willy Tanners didn't intend to kill his wife. And the proof, his attorneys say, is in that toxicology report. They admit Tanners gave his wife medication to calm her down. And then when he found her unconscious, they say he gave her Narcan, a drug used to reverse an opioid overdose. So he did not want her dead. This was a terrible accident. The defense argues the accident was caused by a combination of whatever Lynn had taken and the medication Tanners used to inject her. How do you know that Narcan wasn't there? Because he tried to save her, that he went too far, realized he had gone too far. Narcan is not a reversal agent for propofol, and propofol was what stopped her heart at the end. The defense never explained to the jury how the propofol got into Lynn's system. Prosecutors say that the level of drugs discovered in Lynn's body could not have been accidental. The amount of medication is extraordinarily high. Prosecutors said, "You don't give someone that much to save them." He gave her that much to ensure she will die. While Tanners did not testify, his mother did. She wanted the jury to think that Lynn self-exited because she was depressed about her marriage. But prosecutors insist, as sad as Lynn may have been about her marriage, there's no evidence that she abused either drugs or alcohol. They believe Tanners' motive was money and that he murdered Lynn because he didn't want to pay for a divorce and split his assets. After 8 days of testimony, the jury got the case. It took them less than an hour to decide Willy Tanners' fate, guilty of murdering his wife, Lynn, and tampering with the evidence. Many members of the medical community attended the trial. Some believe Willy Tanners thought he was smarter than everyone and that he was going to outsmart the police. Just hours after the guilty verdict, Tanners was sentenced to life in prison, cuffed, and escorted out of the courtroom. She loved him, and she adored him. Her friends believe Lynn loved Willy too much. Prosecutors got justice for Lynn, but it's a tragic ending for the family she loved and fought so hard to keep together. Sometimes the worst injuries don't even leave a mark. The injuries on your heart, on your mind. She carried a lot of scars with her from this relationship. Lynn's team say the most important witness at trial ended up being Lynn herself, and that her journals showed those scars were healing. Family and friends remember her as a wonderful person and a great mother. Lynn and Willy's sons are living with Willy's mother. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tom's True Crime. If you are interested in more in-depth investigations into the most perplexing crimes, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. What are your thoughts about this case? Please share them with us in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe.